Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the business support landscape. My name is Hugh Lightbody. I'm Chief Officer for the Business Gateway National Unit in COSLA. Wee bits of housekeeping just to get through, first of all, just to let you know that the session is going to be recorded to make it available for folks after the event that couldn't see it. You've all been placed on mute to avoid any background noise, and really would encourage you to submit questions, and you'll see on the right of the portal there's a Q&A panel. Please feel free to put questions in there. If that's not working for you, refresh the portal or use a discussion forum, which you can also see on the right there. So our webinar this afternoon, what's it all about? Well, obviously, as businesses across Scotland continue to recover post-pandemic, they're now faced with further concerns, including rising energy costs, cost of living crisis, alongside labour and supply shortages. And during these challenging and unsettling times, it's vital that businesses are well equipped with the knowledge and skills to thrive and grow. This webinar is bringing together a number of representatives from Business Support Network across Scotland to explore what help is available and discuss those challenges and indeed opportunities as well of running a business in the current climate. So I'm joined this afternoon by Rhona Allison, who's Managing Director Business Growth at Scottish Enterprise, Jane Morrison-Ross, who's Chief Executive of South of Scotland Enterprise, Rachel Hunter, Director of Service Delivery at Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and Kirstine Hale, who's Employer Services Manager, Skills Development Scotland. So a big welcome to the panel, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and giving us your time and your expertise. So we've covered the kind of why we're here. As I've said to folks, obviously get those questions into us. But what we'll do to get the kind of discussion going is, I've said there about the challenges and the opportunities perhaps that exist, the issues that we're trying to deal with. Just to kind of first off, a kind of general question for all of the panel really. What do you feel is the best way for businesses to prepare during challenging and uncertain times like we have? And I'm going to start with Rhona.
Thank you, Hugh, and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's absolutely critical, Hugh, isn't it? And it's actually irrespective. I mean, you've covered the fact that we've gone through Brexit, we've gone through the pandemic, now facing the challenges around cost of living, cost of doing business. And actually, I think the one thing we can be confident about is that change is always going to happen in the wider environment and the business environment that we work in. So for me, how best to ensure or be best able, I suppose, to respond to a lot of the challenges, I think there's three things. Ultimately, I think overarching, it's that connectivity with your strategy, connectivity with the business plan. Is it still relevant? Is it still as valid today as it was when it was created? Are you reviewing it enough just to make sure that actually if there's opportunity there, as well as not opportunity, that actually you can do that? Then for me, there's three big key areas for companies to consider. One is around that broad innovation. How can you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? How can you ensure that you're using to the best advantage the skills that you have within your business? And for me, that innovation is shown through a number of routes. Innovation, sometimes I think companies go, innovation, that's a word, it's not a word I use day to day in my business. But for me, engage with your employees, share the challenges, and actually often what we're seeing is that drive for innovation, that drive to get things right, actually is very much linked with employees know they're facing it, they're dealing with it. Second, it's around that product, service, process activity. Is there new products you can bring to the market? Is there different ways you can look, review your processes to make sure that they're absolutely online, as efficient as possible, still relevant? Again, employee engagement really critical in that. People that are actually doing the process will often know where the efficiencies are within that. So I think absolutely driving through that, but also about exploring new markets. Some new markets, I'm talking there about diversification opportunities that you might have within your business. So, you know, is there a new product, new service, a new area that you can link into that's actually a growing sector? But also then expanding into the international market, Hugh. You know, expand the number of customers you can have by looking to export and to sell your products to more customers, to more individuals. So for me, the challenge is how you can set yourself up is definitely around the innovation element, about really trying to ensure you're relevant, always trying to differentiate in the market with something that's really relevant and needed, because that's the emerging opportunity, looking at how you can expand your customer base. And then I suppose, like, lastly, it's that aligning any investment you do with that core element of your strategy. So it's that element about trying to be as productive and as increasing your productivity, be as efficient as possible, and invest in those areas that are going to deliver that for you.
Okay, really, really useful. And I suppose what you've made me think there is that one of the things our local teams were picking up during certainly the pandemic side of things was that because of the kind of lockdown, the situation that we were facing, an awful lot of business folks were having the opportunity to work on the business, not just in the business. And I think as well that from a, you know, addressing challenges and opportunities, having the opportunity to work on the business and taking the time, whatever the circumstances, to try and work on the business, very important. And
Do you know,
your internationalization thing, I'm just thinking as well,
yeah,
digital skills. How do you use your digital
completely.
skills to get into that? Yeah.
You know, Hugh, you're absolutely right. And I think there was a lot of opportunity to do that. I think, on the other hand, I think probably what a lesson for all of us is not to get caught up in the day-to-day all the time, and actually ensuring that you have the check-ins with working on the business, if you like, using your terminology, and actually ensuring that that happens frequently enough, even if it's just a check to say, yep, we're still on target, or actually we're not, you know, we're moving faster than the market's moving faster than us. Whatever the answer is, I think looking at that, digitization is critical. I think that was quite a revolution, wasn't it, with regards to the pandemic? So many businesses had to consider going online, and did go online because that was their means to survival. There wasn't the footfall coming, or depending on what the product is, but definitely saw a lot of innovation, frankly, a real innovation that was really happening on the hoof, which was in lots of ways for the economy and for individual businesses a need for survival.
Yeah. And that's where things like our Digital Boost program have come to the fore in that. Rachel, I could see you nodding there as Rhona was speaking. A particular perspective from yourself on this?
Yeah, no, well, I agree a lot with what Rhona was saying there. I think certainly over the last couple of years, in terms of my role in High, we've been speaking about how do we grow resilience in businesses. And I did a bit of work in trying to think, well, what is a resilient business? What does it actually mean? And thankfully, there's been quite a bit of work done in the academic sector in terms of how can you define a resilient business? And one of the, I suppose, a very succinct definition that I came across is resilience is the ability to protect and grow value in the face of rapidly changing external conditions. And I think I like this particular definition, I suppose, because it's clear there is a downside of change, and it's challenging, but there also it's the ability to be able to act on opportunities as they come along and be quite agile. And I think that's really important in terms of businesses are having to be more and more resilient in the current environment. They've had COVID thrown at them, they've had the cost of energy crisis, labour shortages, Brexit, so on. So there's so many things. So it's just that ability to be agile. And interestingly, there was some work done on, what are the sort of leadership traits that are key for resilient businesses. And it kind of touches on some of what Rhona was saying, that leaders need to be prepared for any different eventualities. So looking at sort of scenario planning around there, they need to be adaptable. So recognise the importance of having very kind of versatile, adaptable and flexible employees. And I think what we've learned through the COVID pandemic is that our employees can be really, really flexible and adaptable. And, you know, one day we were all working in the office, the next day we weren't, and then we weren't back for 2 years. So obviously, if you're working in an office-based environment, about collaborating and doing things differently, understanding that your staff are a great source of innovation, just coming back to Rhona's point, looking at internal workplace innovation, building trust with your staff, and also being able to lead at a distance. That's really important. And also looking at, and I think also looking at the wider sort of wider corporate and social responsibility. I think there's a wider acknowledgement with COVID and net zero that, and it's particularly something that we're very much focused on in the Highlands and Islands, is that we need to look at the wider responsibilities of business across other key objectives that we're trying to achieve, like community wealth building, generating more value for local communities and working towards the sort of green agenda. So I think the focus on resilience, innovation and people are really, really important going forward in terms of how we adapt to the ongoing and changing conditions. Absolutely.
There's a comment come in from the audience. Rachel, would you mind repeating your definition of business resilience that you gave, please?
Okay, well, I just say, Hugh, it's not my definition. It's,
no, but the one you'd found, found.
Is resilience is the ability to protect and grow value in the face of rapidly changing external conditions. And I think, look, it's very much, we every crisis there's an opportunity, and it's just trying to get that culture and that mindset within business organizations. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. And I know that both Rachel and Rhona there were talking about change. I am reminded though of the quote, "Change is inevitable except from vending machines." So we just need to bear in mind that, and change is a constant. Change is always there with us. Okay, let's move on. Obviously, one of the important things we've certainly seen in the past with Business Gateway in supporting people who start up businesses, we're obviously there to help every business of any style or shape or size, but we particularly are helping people start businesses. And we've seen in the past, in times of adversity, that situation where people start a business because either there is an opportunity or there's a need. So I'm going to ask this, is now a good time to consider starting a business in Scotland? And I'm going to come to Jane on that one.
Thanks, Hugh. Good afternoon again. Yes, I think is the short answer. Those challenges, but we know there are always challenges. And as Rhona said at the beginning, we've weathered several storms on the way here. And we've seen some businesses start up during COVID, for instance, and thrive and do really well coming out to the other side of that. I think we're in a similar position now. We've got the Meet the Buyer sessions on this week, with the first one in the south of Scotland tomorrow. And part of the messaging that I know collectively we're going to be putting across there is there are challenges, but there are new opportunities emerging, and new opportunities emerging to serve supply chains in things like energy transition, in natural capital, in agri-tech and agriculture, in some of the innovations, as Rhona mentioned earlier, that are happening across multiple sectors just now. So I think absolutely, yes, there are opportunities. There are opportunities to pivot your business. There are opportunities to start new businesses, and there's great support out there to help do that.
No, thanks for that, Jane. We have a question in from Michaela from the audience. Michaela's concerned, quite rightly so, about people who are not online, and particularly the elderly who don't use IT. They're a large customer base, but not accessible online. Would the panel possibly want to comment on that? And while you guys are thinking about that, obviously that whole digital accessibility bit is something that local government particularly is concerned about, because not everybody is able to access. But that's even from a connectivity point of view, which is where the Scottish Government, local government working together to try and make that connectivity as good as we can across the whole of Scotland. And various projects happen on that. Any hands up from the panel about anyone who'd like to have a go at addressing that particular question? I'm looking for Jane. On you go. There you go.
It's slightly peripheral, but I think digital has to be one channel to market. It's an increasingly prevalent one, and it's an increasingly cost-effective one, but it doesn't mean that we forget about multi-channel approaches to our customer bases. The other thing I would say is we shouldn't underestimate the percentages of older folk who are connected, who are online, and who are digitally enabled. I know and have several relatives in their 80s who are on Facebook and everything else and online ordering frequently. There's been lots of initiatives like the Connecting Scotland one that launched at the beginning of COVID to help tackle digital inequality as well and close the digital divides. There's amazing work going on across the third sector organisations throughout Scotland, again, to help close that digital divide, connect communities and provide greater accessibility. There's a rollout of broadband across Scotland with R100 and other initiatives as well that are making things much simpler. And Connecting Scotland certainly worked and is still working today to get devices out to the elderly and more vulnerable members of our communities, but critically also provide the training to people so that they're comfortable and confident in using those. So I think that customer base is much more digitally enabled than it was 2-3 years ago as well now.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Rhona, I saw you interested in jumping in as well. Can I invite you in?
I did, and a lot of thanks, Hugh. Really building on exactly what Jane was saying, it's that reinforcement, isn't it? That digital is important, but it's multi-channels we need to work with here. Face-to-face is critical, and I know that locally, regionally, Scottish Enterprise, South of Scotland, Highlands and Islands, we all run face-to-face events as well in person, and more networking organisations we're seeing are re-engaging with having face-to-face networking, and it's no longer online, so that is good. Scottish Enterprise ourselves, we also have a call handling, so people can actually use the telephone, you know, and a number to actually speak to somebody if that's how they would rather do that. And also, I know we collectively run that on behalf of a lot of partners on this call. So I think it's a really critical point, and you're right, and it's right to keep us true, to keep reminding, you know, as if we did need it reminded, don't do everything digitally. I agree completely, though. I think the increases in people, and I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's perhaps a location thing now more than anything else. And so, but I do think it's important. And just to, Michaela, to give you hopefully a bit of confidence, is I believe we have many routes of communications and communication channels available.
Yep. Oh, thanks for that, Rhona. So hopefully, Michaela, that helped give you a kind of flavour for the panel's thinking on that. I'm going to move on. I would say to folks out there, obviously, if you've got questions, please put them into the Q&A or the discussion forum. Moving on, we've talked there about change and what businesses can do. What I'm interested to explore is how have we as agencies and organisations adapted ourselves? Because obviously we are having to change ourselves to be able to respond to businesses and what their needs are. So how have we adapted what we're doing? Rachel, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah. Well, I think just, I suppose it's a nice link from the last question. It's actually, you know, certainly with COVID, how have we adapted our communication channels with customers? And, you know, practically overnight, we're providing services online, virtually through, you know, well, initially it was Skype, and then it was Teams and Zoom, and now we're doing the whole three. So yeah, so I think, you know, we've become much more adaptable and much more, I suppose, comfortable in settings such as these, where we're actually presenting to many hundreds of people online and and collaborating online. So and overall, that's that's helping the environment. We're not all traveling to one place, particularly where I'm based in Shetland, so every trip on a plane is emitting some sorts of carbon. So I think certainly we have done that. I think though there has been, certainly from clients over the last sort of 12 months as we've emerged out of COVID, a desire to meet up in person and network. So it's getting the balance right, because we didn't want to go back to everything having to be in person. A physical event, people don't have the time and they want to be a bit more flexible. But certainly what we're finding now, we're running an entrepreneurship program called Impact 30 for young people. They're really keen in having that initial meeting together and getting to know each other, to eyeball each other and do a bit of socializing. But then quickly, these young people are going back to the channels, the media channels that they use, Instagram or all the Snapchat or TikTok or whatever they're using, and they're using that to communicate with each other after the event and keep up with each other. So we're having sort of what we call hybrid programs now. So where we will help people meet in person, but most of the delivery is now for these types of programs online. So I think it's obviously certainly from Highlands and Islands point of view, where we've got people living on small islands, we want to be as inclusive as we can and make sure that if wherever you are, you can participate, and particularly for more disadvantaged groups or women that have got care and responsibility. I should not say women and men have care and responsibilities. They can all participate as well. So I think it's just about being more flexible and agile and using the technology in terms of delivery of our services. That's how we've adapted.
No, absolutely. I would echo that. I mean, from a business gateway point of view, particularly when you're using that word inclusive, while accepting Michaela's point that maybe not everyone can access these kind of digital channels, one of the things we moved from was our face-to-face workshops very quickly in the light of the COVID thing to webinars. And that's been a huge success because we've been able to reach more people more easily. From a sustainability point of view, a net zero point of view, it's been fabulous because, as you've said, people don't need to travel. So that's great. Gives them more time back in their actual business or on working on their business, to use that term from earlier. So that's been a particularly useful thing for us to do. But we've been doing some work recently on service design of the service. And what's also coming out, you mentioned it there, Rachel, networking. That's fine, but businesses, people, they want to meet, they want to talk, they want to find out what folks are doing, who's gone down a rabbit hole that I can now avoid because I can speak to you about it. So I think that's really, really important as well, to get people together. And of course, there's all sorts of business organizations out there that help with that. The Federation of Small Businesses, Chambers of Commerce, they're all out there. They've got meetings, they've got networking, which is great and really, really helpful. Kirstine, can I bring you in on that question? What's SDS been doing to kind of adapt the services that you provide and you deliver?
Sure, thanks, Hugh. Good afternoon, everyone. No, much the same as many other colleagues on the panel today, we've obviously had to adapt very quickly in terms of our business support, and it came at a time where business support was needed more than ever before, I think. So being able to pivot that service into some sort of remote delivery was critical at that point. To be honest, I think because of our digital capability within the organisation, we were quite fortunate in that we had, as an organisation, gone through a bit of digital transformation and moved to things like Office 365, which obviously much more compatibility for these types of interactions. So it was actually quite a quick transition to move into a fully remote business support offer. What I would say is that actually, my observation would be that there's probably some silver linings that have come out of that, and unintended benefits actually from an organisational point of view. You mentioned there, Hugh, in terms of productivity and effectiveness. I manage a team who do one-to-one business support with businesses, helping them kind of navigate the skills system and kind of optimise the opportunities that they're getting out of the kind of wider business support offer in Scotland. And while it's great to build those relationships initially and really get underneath the kind of needs of the business and understand what the drivers are from your customers, actually the ability to interact in a slightly more digital, slightly more agile way has afforded us not only a great deal of extra capacity within the team because we're not traveling, as Rachel said, Scotland has the challenges of geography and, getting from A to B and the time, cost and carbon impact that has, but also the demands of the customer. Quite often our customers are saying to us, you don't actually necessarily need to come and be sitting in a physical room with us to be having that value-added conversation. Yes, it's great to build the relationship in that way in the first instance, but actually on an ongoing basis, it's perfectly acceptable to be having that kind of slightly more cost-effective and time-effective relationship. One other observation I would make is more probably from a personal point of view. I manage a team that is a remote team. We've got staff from the north of Scotland right the way down to Central Belt, south of Scotland. And one of the things that I would say has been absolutely critical over the period is the skills that we've managed to cultivate and develop as an organisation in terms of getting the best out of those digital technologies and not losing that human element, where digital technologies can be fantastic for very targeted approaches to problem solving. You don't necessarily get that same collaboration, that curiosity, creativity stuff that you were talking about yourself, Hugh. And I think that's one of the things that possibly we didn't realise throughout the pandemic, but now that we're starting to get back into that environment, goodness me, is it really noticeable how that is stimulated by the face-to-face environment. So I think, for colleagues who are on the call, it's definitely a blended approach that is working for us, and our service delivery is working well, but definitely thinking about how you can utilise those soft skills to get the best out of your digital solutions within the business.
Yep. Thanks for that, Kirstine. Really, really good. What an observation I would make as well. I think certainly over the last 2 years and continuing, there has been a bigger focus on mental health and well-being in the employment space. So I think that's incredibly important and valuable as well. And I think that's been particularly important because it's actually quite hard sometimes in a digital conversation to gauge how are people genuinely, how are they doing, are they okay? So something I think that's really important. And Beth has commented that she's been to over 25 webinars, fantastic opportunities. That's good to know, Beth. That really is. I'm glad that that's working. We have a question from Lee, and the question from Lee is, does the panel think that poor digital literacy is stopping people from starting businesses? Now that is a really interesting question. I mean, Leah, certainly I spoke earlier there about the Digital Boost program that Business Gateway runs, and colleagues around this panel also offer different digital programs. But the whole ethos of the Digital Boost work that we do in the service we provide is very much at that kind of front end of the foundation level of that kind of digital knowledge about what do businesses want to do. They're really well attended webinars, lots of support in there. So we're certainly doing our bit to try and improve that digital literacy. But in terms of answering your question, is it stopping people from starting businesses? Ooh, who am I going to turn to here? Jane, I'm going to start with you on that one.
It's a really interesting and probably impossible question to answer, Hugh, because I don't think we've got a way of asking people who haven't started businesses why they didn't.
Why they haven't, yes.
I would hope, though, just as you said, that the answer should be no, at least a much smaller percentage now than maybe 2, 3, 5 years ago, because there is much better support out there now. Digital Boost do a fantastic job. Local colleges do lots of even more fundamental, more basic courses to get people ready to take advantage of Digital Boost. I think there's a really good sort of supply chain of
Yeah.
support out there to take people through the very, very basic steps, even if it's how you switch your computer on. To be able to build up to take advantage to it. So I would hope that it's not as much of an issue now as it has been in the past. And I think there's even additional support out there for people, with differing needs as well, who are maybe visually impaired, or who have additional support needs for using digital technologies. So hopefully we're beginning to eradicate that as one reason.
No, absolutely. That's a really good point. I mean, particularly your accessibility bit there, that's something that on certainly the Business Gateway website, we've been doing some work on that recently, and we've adapted or used something called Recite Me to try and improve that accessibility for folks, because we're obviously very conscious, and that has become more conscious actually as a consequence of the whole COVID situation, that there are communities out there that we might not be reaching, we might not be accessible to. So we're trying to improve on that. So yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that. We have another question in from Ken. And the question is, the current market may have good support, but is being let down by banks not supporting good plans, especially startups. Does the panel have any comments on this problem? Rhona, can I come to you with that one?
Yeah, of course, Hugh. It is a good question, Ken. It's a question that comes up again and again, the wider finance, not just banks, but the wider finance, and how do companies go about getting support to enable them to follow through in their business plan. Let me talk about that, and then I'll maybe come back, if you like, to the specific question of banks, because I think part of this is actually in the there's a difference, isn't there, between a great concept and a great idea for a startup, and then actually having the business plan in place that actually demonstrates that money will be made from it. And if we think banks are there because they want to make money, obviously, as well, they're a business too, that's not minimizing the challenge here. So I think, first of all, for me, this is about us all being very robust and making sure that we're signposting to the support that's in place for entrepreneurs, for anyone looking to start a business, that actually has the support around what is expected in a business plan, what do you go about, how do you go about achieving that. And I know that the access to the information that's on Find Business Support, for example, is really good in helping with that. And that's something also that's an important element there. I think there's also the aspect of saying, is bank finance always the right finance? Question. So I know, for example, in Scottish Enterprise, part of the service we have around investment is actually for companies to understand what are the investment options out there: equity investment, debt investment. Is it built on a mixture of actually family and friends investment, therefore not going via the bank? So I think there's a multitude of routes for raising the investment or the money that's required. And there's also that element, is it a really capital investment hungry business, or is it one that can grow be still ambitious, be still very looking at being successful, but actually using a different model, perhaps using a customer model, using a subscription model. So I think there's a lot of different models within Scottish Enterprise, as we will have with many other partners. We can help with regards to what is the right business model for businesses to use. Here's a number of options, for example, looking at the investment option, looking also at the grants and support, particularly for capital investment that is out there and is available. For example, in Scottish Enterprise, we've got mini capex support for pieces of equipment that companies are looking to put in that will increase productivity, that will increase their innovation, their ability to be more competitive, both internationally competitive as well as nationally competitive. And that grant is exactly that. We also do loans because we do recognise there's certain types of businesses that are very risky for banks to invest in, and therefore that's why, again, coming back to the wider investment options. The last thing I would say about bank, without knowing the absolute business model, I think banks have been I think we could go to a number of businesses who would demonstrate that the bank has been very supportive of their growth and their ability to grow and to give them the funds that are required. Other types of businesses, not so much. So as part of our role as enterprise agencies, we are in regular conversations with banks, with regular conversations with taking feedback from customers, understanding that wider environment and looking where we can to, I suppose, assist with regards to maybe some knowledge gaps about particular sectors, some knowledge gaps about particular types of businesses and about different types of ways that businesses are run. So I hope, Ken, that answered your question. I just think there's lots of options. Banks aren't the only one, depending on the types of business that you're looking at, and also access to support. You will get that. Find Business Support, a great location to go to, central location that can help you with regards to startup businesses and will direct you then to the likes of Business Gateway, Scottish Enterprise, South of Scotland, Highlands and Islands, and about how we can help further.
Okay, thanks for that, Rhona. Rachel, I know you were keen to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rhona's covered a lot of what I was going to say in terms of the, you know, in terms of getting expertise in from the enterprise agencies and Business Gateway in terms of sense checking that business plan and looking at other options for investment. But what I would say, certainly in Highlands and Islands Enterprise, you know, when you're looking at a business proposal, you know, the public sector usually can't come in with 100% of the funding required. So we're always going to have to be working with partners in the private sector. And what we try to do, because we have 8 area teams on the ground, is we know the local banking people if they've got a banking presence in the area. If not, then we can, you know, we can work with others. But you know, it's sometimes what we do is actually sit down as with the client, the bank, and ourselves, and try and figure out how we can develop this proposal and work together. So I think it's just what Rhona was speaking about is speak to Business Gateway, speak to your enterprise agency to see what support is available, and you know, maybe and also getting your plan investor ready is really important. So that's the only point I was going to add to that.
That's great. Thanks for that, Rachel. Just so that folks know, obviously lots of questions coming in. If we don't get to your question, rest assured we will try and answer that out with the webinar and get back to you with an answer on that. But we'll try and get through as many as we possibly can. I'd like to turn to the question from Kathleen, who's interested to know what support there is for business who would like to take on a school leaver or graduate. Kirstine, can I come to you on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Kathleen. I suppose we would start with the position of what is it you're looking to do with that graduate or school leaver? You know, what is the business need that you're trying to fulfill with that individual? And that will probably help to flush out, you know, the different routes to market that you might have in those kind of conversations. As you know, within Skills Development Scotland, we have a large part of our organisation that does the careers advice and guidance service within the school environment, as well as the kind of all age service for individuals. So there's a very obvious route to market there to access young talent, young people who are looking at those kind of transition points in time. I suppose one of the key things from an SDS point of view, it'd be remiss of me to not to mention, but you know, if it is an opportunity you're looking as a development and training role, then apprenticeships is definitely one area to consider, and that comes with a whole host of support in terms of, you know, identifying the right individual, marketing the job opportunity on apprenticeships.scot, which gives you a kind of direct access to that school audience, because that's the website where young people are directed to look for opportunities across kind of apprenticeship and kind of post-school opportunities. There's sort of wider business support in terms of, you know, if you're looking to identify what it is specifically you want that individual to do, and that will depend on the size of business that you are largely. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, one-to-one business support around skills and talent attraction, looking at kind of fair work strategies, but also looking at the kind of long-term development needs within the kind of skills space for your organisation. And if, you know, whether you're a small business or a larger one, if you're in that kind of SME space, there are particular products and services that look at supporting you with identifying those very specific skills needs that you might have in the kind of medium to long term around kind of consultancy products such as Skills for Growth and their kind of funded opportunities. But I would probably say, you know, as a starter for 10, you can't really go wrong with the likes of Find Business Support as a portal to identify, you know, what it is that's out there. That kind of is a one-stop shop for all of the kind of public sector offer around skills, business development, etc. So identifying, you know, some of the support services in there, and then following that link through into the kind of wider, more targeted support. And, you know, as we said, sometimes it's nice to even speak to a human being, so that there are links there to things like the employer helpline that we have within SDS that can give you very targeted support around identifying what your needs might be in that space.
Great,
That
thanks, Kirstine. That's great, absolutely. Just picking up a couple of the questions that are appearing on our chat from folks, and thank you everyone for submitting them. There's one there from Juan Andres who is saying, where can micro enterprises find free and good support to identify what they may need in relation to digital skills? What I would suggest, one is on the Business Gateway website, there is a Digital Boost, and Digital Boost has a health check, and that's a good starting point. That you go in, put yourself through that, and that gives you a kind of a hint and an idea about what the kind of support is that you might need. And then, as I've said, Digital Boost as a program, we have webinars with various different things there that we can help get you sort of more digitally savvy, which is the whole point of the Digital Boost program. So I would recommend doing the wee health check there, the wee digital health check, and that will give you a wee clue as to what you're looking to do. Michaela has asked about relating to digital accessibility and literacy. Certain groups of people have financial issues. Basically, Jane has asked to share with you, Michaela, a website, https:// have a look at connecting.scot for that one. Okay. We also have a question from Bobby Curry. Bobby is asking, as a small business in craft gin, we struggle to stand out amongst established competitors who have a budget and a level of marketing experience way beyond their own. Would anyone on the panel have advice on best routes to accelerated organic growth for new businesses? Rachel, I'm going to come to you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the first thing to do, I mean, obviously we're not speaking about specifics here, but I think it'd be important to try and, if you're not already engaged with Business Gateway, to see if we could get, you know, some advice on, you know, with somebody with experience in this particular sector, just to get an input into the marketing, your marketing strategy, and also, you know, and the I suppose the resources you have at your disposal. I think it's really important as well, and I suppose this probably ties in with the sort of Digital Boost offer, is digital marketing can be really, really effective, you know, if you get the right strategy, and using a lot of these tools can be relatively, you know, affordable or cost effective compared to, you know, the big glitzy signs with the big gin companies and all the rest of it. So I think my advice would be, you know, specifically take your marketing plan or your to your Business Gateway or to an advisor to get that free advice and input, and think about what you can do from a digital marketing point of view. It's all, I mean, the gin market is, you know, there's a lot of gin out there, and it's about that USP and that point of difference that your gin has to others, and I suppose maximising that and enabling people to catch on to that and to see that. But hopefully some marketing specialist input would help do that.
Grand, thanks, Rachel. I have to say that the question about gin has inspired the panel. Many of them wish to come in on this question. I can't imagine why. Jane, do you want to have a wee go as well?
Just really briefly, I think the advice that Rachel's, I know I saw all the hands going up, that Rachel's given there is really, really good. I think also depending on where you're located, that many of SE High and us, we have specialist advisors that have a depth of knowledge that are really worth tapping into as well. So it's worth speaking to your local development or enterprise agency. I also think it's worth having a look at some of the companies that have done this incredibly well on a shoestring initially. So there's North Uist Gin Distillery, for instance, set up just before the pandemic by a young couple from the island, and they really started from a very slim base, and they've used social media to incredible effect. You know, their gin is now multi-award winning right across the country. There's smaller companies like Bigger Gin that are producing niche, really targeted gins. Again, most of them tend to have leveraged social media and networks of networks really effectively as well. So yeah, reach out and speak to your local enterprise company as well as using Business Gateway, and have a look at the ones that are already doing it really well.
Great, thanks, Jane. Rhona, anything you want to add?
I think
Possibly
my
some
colleagues
tonic?
I think my colleagues have covered it brilliantly, to be honest.
Okay, grand. Thank you for that. Okay, let's see, what else have we got? We have a question from Kevin. Kevin's asking, will the UK government change today that SMEs are reclassified as companies with 500 employees and under be enacted? Will it be enacted in Scotland? Therefore, larger companies can be eligible for support denied if they are classed as large companies. Wow. Kevin, what I would say is that probably you, like us, are still trying to digest what the, I think it was Chris Philp that came out and said that they were going to do something incredible about regulations or completely removing regulations, which is causing a bit of a stir. With what does that mean? And reclassifying and doing all sorts. So I think at this stage, you, us, everybody are still trying to work out what's happening and what does it mean. We're also probably hanging fire as well to see if it's changed by 5 o'clock tonight and there's a U-turn on that, depending on how people view it. But we will certainly be keeping our eyes on that one to understand what the implications of that might be. So unfortunately, we haven't got an answer for that one just now. Moving on to a question from Mark. What support is available for a business looking to expand but requiring to purchase property and land? Wow, that's a good one. Rhona, I'm going to come to you on that one.
Super, thank you. I would actually say there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support available for businesses, particularly businesses looking to expand. Growth is so important, and that element around the expansion of your physical premises to enable you to cope with demand is really important. So, for example, within Scottish Enterprise, we have it depends if there's going to be R&D involved. It depends if it's a wider project. If it's just for purchasing land per se, then it's not really, it depends where you are throughout. But if it's actually linked to that wider innovation, that ability to test that new innovative products, new pipelines, buy equipment. I talked earlier about the Scottish Enterprises mini CapEx investment proposal, which helps about buying equipment. Often, if you're looking at this aspect, I would say you don't come to it just about the purchasing of the land. You look at the purchasing of the land as part of the overall programme, as part of the overall core of the business. And what goes hand in hand with that will be investment in equipment. Goes hand in hand with that will be investment in innovation in your processes and your procedures. So I would absolutely encourage you to speak to to speak to your enterprise agency with regards to the expansion that you're looking to do, because expanding your business is brilliant, growth is brilliant, better employment and greater numbers of employment of the good, fair work jobs are exactly what we're here to help and support. So we'd love to hear from you wherever you happen to be based. And actually, if you come to one of us and we're not right, don't worry, we'll do it behind the scenes and we'll sort it out. So we'd love to hear from you. But I think that for me, Hugh, is a really important question, and I can widen it out if you like, rather than just about the property element.
Please.
I think when you're looking at expansion, you're looking at those options for you as a business, please go and talk to to our specialists, to our advisors, who can really help with regards to help identify, direct you to the support that is available, if that's by the individual organisation or not. We're really, really well connected behind the scenes to understand what each other does, and Find Business Support is one example of that. But come and talk to us about what your expansion plans are, because we can almost certainly help, and often add an awful lot of value to that as well. So I would just encourage any conversation, and any project is, if you like, it looks at all of those elements. It looks at people, it looks at innovation, and it looks at property and accommodation.
Okay, thank you for that, Rhona. Rachel, I'm going to bring you in on that as well.
Yeah, just to say that, I mean, I agree. I mean, in terms of High's investment, we always look at what purpose the land or the property was going to be put, and what were the growth aspirations. And we're less likely to invest directly in just land purchase and that's it, because it would be interfering too much in the sort of commercial property market. But saying that, we also have High itself has a portfolio of property and some land that we have across the Highlands and Islands that we've secured for economic development. So certainly, I don't know where you're from. Sorry, who the question was, it from?
It was Mark.
Yeah, I don't know where you're based, or you're wanting to be based, but if you look on the High website, we've got various business units that and business parks that we've developed right across the Highlands and Islands, from the Western Isles to Moray and so on, and every place in between. So obviously we're keen to talk to anybody that's needing property or land in the Highlands and Islands, and we might have a place available for your business to grow and expand.
Excellent point, actually, Rachel. Can I just say excellent point? So do we. So, and actually, I think actually it's a brilliant point, because what I would say is throughout Scotland, there is a property that is owned that's designated for innovation parks, designated for expansions, be it an individual company or for a piece of land. So yeah, I would just encourage, talk to us, because it's an excellent point.
Okay, Jane, anything you want to add to that?
I think that's been incredibly well covered. I think, as has been said, come and talk to us. We've got property specialists in South of Scotland Enterprise. We have a smaller selection of property that we may be able to have available, but we're working with a number of companies just now, not just ones already based in the south of Scotland, but ones that want to take advantage of the M74 or the ferry links from Cairnryan to come and create new opportunities in the south. So yes, come and talk to us.
Grand, there you go. We've talked a lot this afternoon, quite obviously, about businesses. But what are businesses? Businesses are just people, groups of people coming together to do stuff. And a really important part in any of the work we're talking about here, in terms of the challenges and the opportunities that we face, comes down to our people and our skills. So I have a question I want to put to Kirstine. What core skills are going to be the key to business success in the immediate and long-term future? And how can businesses access support to develop those within their workforce?
Thanks, Hugh. Yeah, really, we could have a whole webinar on that in itself, I'm sure. And I think actually from the programme there are some more dedicated skills-based sessions later on in the week, if people on the call want to dip into them, looking, for example, at the kind of the digital skills space, and looking at kind of net zero and skills for small businesses in particular. So I suppose it really goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the call, the change environment that we're operating in. I think, there's a quote that kind of kicks around quite often around the pace of change is the fastest that we've ever seen, and it's the slowest that we're ever going to see going forward. And I think it's the stark reality of the world that we live in. Now, if you think about the speed of technological change, if we think about the demographic challenges that we're facing too in terms of population growth in Scotland, ageing workforce, etc., we think about the climate change agenda, and we also think about, you talked previously about well-being, Hugh, and I think the relationship that we all have with the world of work now, and that is changing, whether we like it or not, for better or for worse. There is definitely a shift from the relationship that people have with their jobs and their employment and what they want to get out of it. You kind of contextualize that in terms of the challenges that we're facing right now around labour supply and the tightening of the labour market. And, we speak to businesses, day in, day out. My team are speaking to businesses about their specific challenges.
Oh, I think we may have lost Kirstine a bit there. Yep, I think we've... Yeah, I think we've lost her. That's a shame. We'll come back to that one if we can. We got a question from Melissa. She's in the process of starting up a for-profit business that supplements formal education for youth. And she's wondering about grant support and wondering if it's a business that is for profit, whether there wouldn't be grant support. Maybe that's more for charity businesses. Oh, it's a good question. Who am I going to come to? I'm going to come to Rhona. Or maybe I'm going to come to Rachel, because I think Rhona may be frozen as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can take that one. So just so this is this is a not for sorry. This is a
for-profit one.
This is
yeah.
I suppose when I first read the question, it looks like a social enterprise, because ultimately a social enterprise is a type of business.
I think we are having some technical difficulties here. We keep losing people. Rhona, we've got you back. Maybe you can have a go at this one before you disappear again.
Can you? I was thrown off. So and Kirstine's back as well. So could you maybe repeat the question?
Yeah,
Hugh,
so
just so that I'm
sure. It's a question from Melissa. She is in the process of starting up a for-profit business that supplements formal education for youth. Mm-hmm. And where can she find information on grants that can help fund her business? Or since her business is for profit, if grants are more given to charity businesses, are there grants that my for-profit business can access? For example, youth who may not be able to pay for the services. So maybe there is perhaps support direct to the individual to be able to purchase the services, as I guess the question there. Okay. If there is no grant support for the business.
Yes.
And I'm conscious there are 4 minutes remaining, so let's scalp through this if we can.
Very quickly, because actually Kirstine might be the best person to answer this better than me. But what I would say is encourage you to look at Find Business Support, brilliant source of for startup, for grants that are available. We will connect, we'll put that link in there, and actually it also gives you places to go if you don't get the answer you want. The call service that I mentioned earlier, you can phone up and ask that. There's a telephone number on Find Business Support if you want to speak to somebody as well.
That's great. Thanks, Rhona. Kirstine, give it a crack. See if you can conclude that skills question.
So apologies, I'm not sure whether the question that Rhona was answering there, I missed the start of it.
That was a different one from Melissa. That was a different one from Melissa.
So I'll just go back to the skills question. That was the one around, the future skills demand. We know obviously that digital literacy, digital skills are going to be essential to kind of business growth going forward. We know that there's a massive agenda around the net zero kind of skills transition, if you like, and there's lots of policy coming down the line which will inform our products and services as they develop into that space. But much more broadly than that, I think the evidence that the kind of academia and a lot of the OECD research is telling us that actually the skills that are going to be absolutely essential in this rapidly changing environment that we're working in are kind of the human skills, if you like. So things like collaboration, like innovation, problem solving, curiosity, all of these kind of big, kind of broad sweeping words that we like to kind of throw in from time to time are actually going to be absolutely critical as business processes and some of the kind of slightly more mechanical aspects of the world of work transition into artificial intelligence and you know, machine learning and all that kind of stuff, the ability to harness those human traits is going to be absolutely critical. Now, that's all very well and good, but what does that mean in the real world? I think, you know, within SDS, one of the things that we're looking at is those economies across Europe who have been very successful in this space. And some of the attributes that they have, we're told, are, you know, things like working very closely with industry to inform what that skills development landscape looks like so that it's based on industry need, a very high proportion of work-based learning within the economies who are performing very well. And when I say performing well, we're talking about productivity in most instance.
Kirstine,
yeah.
I'm sorry, we're running out of time, so I'm going to have to stop you there.
No,
because
absolutely.
we are just about out of time, but that was really useful. Listen, everyone out there, thank you very much for joining us. We have covered an awful lot of ground there. This hour has shot past, and we're getting feedback from Michaela and Beth. Very inspiring panel. Thank you. They say, well, thank you for joining us all this afternoon. It has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you'll join more of the opportunities during Scottish Business Week that you'll get to hear from a wide range of people on a wide variety of topics. But just thank you to the panel again for joining us this afternoon, and thank you again to everyone out there who has taken the time to join us this afternoon and such brilliant questions. That's really kept us on the spot. Thank you very much.